So good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of CTC Train Canada, I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar, 3 Ways to Boost Your Productivity with Office 2016 and or Office 365. Very glad to have you all with us this afternoon. As with any new version of a software, there's always that what's in it for me question. Is it worth the upgrade? Or if my company is already upgraded, am I really taking full advantage of all the new features of this software? So that's what we'll be looking at today. We have with us Alex Donis. Alex has been a senior instructor with us at Train Canada for over 7 years, very focused on the MS Office suite of products, and has been teaching and working with Office 2016 since it's become available. So very well positioned to share with us what we need to know this afternoon. So again, thank you very much for joining us, everybody, and we'll pass the word over to Alex. Alex, we're very much looking forward to what you have to present to us on Office 2016. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very, very, very much for that very warm welcome. And good day, everyone who happens to be listening and watching along with me. Let me just go ahead and share my screen with you guys. All right, there we go. Okay. All right. So welcome to some of the 3 sort of interesting features for Office 2016 and 365 that we'll be looking at today. As mentioned, my name is Alex Donis, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about how some of these features can definitely improve on your productivity. Now, I do want to preface this one little webinar here with one sort of element. Because we're showing collaboration as the very first feature, there oftentimes can be a little bit of a lag or glitch between moving between accounts. Now you'll notice I currently have an account in Office 365 being shared that says that it belongs to somebody named Karen. I also have another one open for someone named Molly. All right, so I'm going to try to kind of showcase some of the ways that these 2 people can collaborate sort of between my different windows there. Now, as I'm going through as Karen, perhaps one of the things she wants to do is work on a document that she'll inevitably want to have other people brought in on. So she goes ahead and opens up her OneDrive. And what this is going to do is taking her to her online files and her Office 365 files that are saved up in the cloud. Now, one of the things that you kind of want to think about is how this can ultimately affect you. Okay. When we go into the cloud. Sorry about that. When we go into the cloud, the 2 areas that you basically want to focus on mostly are the files that you've got and the files that have been shared with you from other people. So when I take a look at the files that I've got, I might want to be able to work on some of these files and make some changes to them. So as I go through, or as Karen goes through, as it were, one of the things she might want to look at is this press release for a bank marathon. So she goes ahead and opens it up. And from the onset, we get a view-only copy of this document that is saved in the cloud at the moment. And she can go ahead and choose different ways to edit it. So she can edit it in Word, which is the full version of 2016, or she can edit it in the browser. And so there's a bit of a difference between these 2 things. If she chooses to edit it in Word, she gets the full application. She gets every single feature. She gets all different elements that she's working on, and she's working on it locally on her machine. If she chooses to edit in the browser, as we're about to right now, she's working online. Okay? So as she works online, these changes that she makes to it are going to save a little bit as she goes through. So she's thinking, all right, perhaps I want to be able to make these changes and save it related to Vancouver, perhaps. And so she goes in and she makes a change and calls it Vancouver. And she thinks, okay, I might want to start looking at this marathon and perhaps planning something that would be good for Vancouver. And she starts going in and making some changes. Now, as she's working on this, you'll notice that it is saving up in the cloud. All right, and there the changes have been saved. Now, eventually, this document that she's working on is going to get updated and changed around to something a little bit more modern, all right, for the new upcoming Vancouver Marathon. But she might want to be able to collaborate with this and collaborate with other people to get them to help her work on it. And it's very simple. She's got a button up here that simply says share. And we're going to let that load up. And she can invite people who can either edit or simply view this document to help her out. And so we're going to go ahead and invite some people to help her out with it. And she's going to go ahead and invite Molly. So she goes in, and as you can see, it just goes right to Molly Clark, who's the a sales account manager that she might want to have help with it. So we go ahead and put a little bit of a message here. And she'll say, hi, Molly. Would you mind taking a look at some of the changes that I'm proposing for an upcoming marathon? Oops. Thanks, Karen. Okay, so we have different options here. She can, because she's in her organization, she can just send it right off. But if she wanted to, she could create a link that could be potentially sent for people outside the organization, or see what other people that this document is already shared with. Now, at this moment, she wants to go in and she wants to invite some additional people for it. Now, we're not going to require a sign-in because it's in the organization. So she's going to go ahead and share this with Molly. All right, and we can see that the sharing is used to a guest link. Now I'm going to go over to Molly right now. And Molly's just going to go ahead and she's going to go open up her email. She opens up her email and she sees a message saying, hey, would you mind taking a look at this? She opens it up and she sees that she can open up this bank press release and help her out. So she jumps into it. All right, and we can see that Molly is now in it. She chooses to edit the document in the browser, and she jumps into Word Online. So we see that Karen is editing the document, and we see Karen's up at the top. We see this little flag up here that's showcasing that she's currently in this document. So Molly can go in and she can start looking at different parts of the document that she might be able to help with. And she can go ahead and start inputting her different commentary. Leading financial institutions serving individuals, small, mid-sized businesses, and corporations. And she can begin inserting her edits and some of the additional information. Now, what's interesting about this is this all can happen live. I'm going to take this window and pop it over here, and I'm going to put Karen over here. Now, if we go down a little bit, you can see that Molly's information has already been added directly into it. Karen's going to go in and she's going to start adding some additional features to it and making some changes. She's going to go ahead and select Seattle. And as you can see, when she selects Seattle, the flag for Karen jumps over in Molly's screen to the point that she's in. And when Karen goes in and selects Seattle and starts replacing it with Vancouver, we can see the changes happening in both instances live. So this real-time collaboration really will allow different people to be able to be working truly simultaneously on the same document in this very sort of real-time way. Now, when Molly goes in and sees the changes that she's making, she can go ahead and be responsible for edits, or she can be responsible for providing additional information at the same time. So let's think about this in terms of the relationship between, quite often when you have one person who is drafting a document and another person who is editing or formatting a document. It simply means that we don't have to wait for one person to be done for the next person to jump in and start making some changes, and we can increase our productivity by having these two elements happening simultaneously. While Molly works on that and continues her edits, Karen may choose to start looking at some different elements of this marathon that she might want to be able to work with, aside from just being able to understand what different pieces she can work through. If she selects the word marathon and right-clicks, you can see that she can make different type of editing options available right off the bat. These editing options, if she goes in and starts making changes, like let's say she makes this blue, for instance, we can see that the formatting is also going to take effect on the other side, all happening live. Now, she might want to know, is there some additional things that she might want to learn about? Are there other things that might be able to help her in terms of aiding to this document? So perhaps she might want to look at a new Office 2016 feature called Delft. She scrolls down and she opens up Delft. And what Delft does is it allows you to really understand not only what other people in your organization are working on, but what you have access to, things that might be related to the content of whatever it is that you're working on. She's going to jump in and she can do a little search. She's going to put in marathon. And she can see that there's been a variety of different elements and and content that might help her out in this collaboration. She can see that Molly has been working on sponsorship metrics, as well as Alan Steiner, who's been working on different elements about sponsorship grants. All of this stuff has been showcased inside Delft. So it's sort of like a way of doing a thorough search through your OneDrives as well as SharePoint. Now, perhaps these sponsorship grants are something that you really might want to look at in more depth a little bit later on. She can go through and she's got a little flag here to add to favorites. Once she's chosen to favorite it, it's going to appear in her favorite section. Sort of like different ways that you can bookmark your own areas of interesting documents, sort of like shortcuts. But it's a way to kind of put these things all together. She also might want to see what else Molly's been working on. Now, bear in mind, she can only see the things that has been shared with her that's related to Molly. And you can see that it goes directly into the content itself. It's not just the name of the different files that are being chosen here, but it's actually directly within the content. So you can see little previews defining exactly which elements she might want to go ahead and look at. If she's interested in understanding more about these sponsorship grants, she can open it up. And once again, if she's interested, she can go ahead and share these different elements directly with Molly. Now, she's not looking to have her view this stuff. So she goes in, chooses, and goes ahead and shares. When she comes back into, when we look back at Molly's and we go into her OneDrive or even her mail, we're going to see the elements that have been shared with her. And she's able to see those, this file. and of course can open it up. And brings us right back to her being able to find more information about Karen directly inside Delft. So as they're working on these different elements of the marathon, one of the things that they might want to do is just understand a little bit more about the marathons in general. Now, Molly's done a little bit of work on marathons before, so she might want to be able to see those things directly as they're understood from a technical perspective. And by technical, she might want to be able to work on a single file that she was working on prior for a previous marathon that she had helped out with. So she goes ahead and she opens up Excel. Now, as she jumps into Excel, she can see different little tables of elements that she's been working on in the past that she's kind of used to present on previous marathons that she wants to go ahead and present back to Karen again. Now, when she goes inside the software, she's starting to think about ways that she wants to present this stuff, but she wants to present it in a way that is going to be best understood. So it's very easy for us to get caught up in all the tables and all the data and the numbers that we can work with. But it's always a lot better if you can go ahead and present it. Now, through different types of visualizations, especially in the new Office 2016 environment, you can better present these visualizations so that you can understand the data a little bit better, as well as being able to present those ideas to others who can understand it in a much simpler and much more cohesive way. So rather than getting wrapped up in the numbers, getting one of these modern visualizations can really help you out. So we've got three that I want to look at today: Tree Map, Sunburst, and Waterfall. Now, these three different charting types were developed for 2016 and is one of the newer ways that we can visually present our data to get our message across in a much simpler way. Now, when I select Tree Map, traditionally we would select the data, we would go to Insert, and try to determine which different map we should choose, or which different chart we should choose, rather. But you'll notice this little button in the bottom right-hand corner on Quick Analysis. Now, it says Quick Analysis allows you to quickly and easily analyze your data with Excel's most useful tools, such as charts, color coding, and formulas. I'm going to jump inside. We're going to jump right to charts. So right now, what it's doing is it's making a few different recommendations of possible charts we can work with. But if I'm not really happy with these, and they look okay, but I might want to see what other elements I have available to me. And as you can see, I have different recommendations that can be made. Now, we've got elements our Sunburst, and there it has our tree map. So it represents the values of as the areas of rectangles. It's useful for representing hierarchical information. And that's essentially what it's quite nicely for, similar to a donut chart. Now, if I say OK, you're going to notice that it looks a little bit funny. The reality is that we don't always think about the way the chart is always going to come out looking from the moment that we build it. In this case, you'll notice that I have my data in ascending order, or in other words, alphabetical order, based on the sponsorship team lead. And that makes perfect sense for the table, but doesn't necessarily make sense for the chart. If I simply jump inside my data, and I go to the Data tab, and I sort it A to Z alphabetically, we can see that the sponsorships are in that order. But if I do it over to the division side, A to Z, the chart's going to follow suit. And all of a sudden, we're looking at things in a much smarter hierarchy. You'll notice that I built this left to right so that the larger hierarchies are seen on the left, and we see how they subdivide as you go forward. This is an important troubleshooting tip when it comes to working with any of the new chart types. Because as we go through different charts, we don't always have the ability to necessarily have the data in the ideal way that we want for our chart. Now, I can choose to double-click on the word Home to minimize my ribbon and give myself a little bit more space for working with this chart. I'll make it a little bit bigger for us now. So the reason they call this a tree map is because the different branches of the trees are represented by these rectangles, and the colors are represented by the larger categories. I'll pop in a quick little title. And I can choose different ways that I can format it directly from the chart area or very, very quickly in the design and format area. If I jump to design, you can see that I've got a variety of different ways that I can choose to present this information. So it's a very quick and easy way that we can get that formatting done really nicely. If I'm not thrilled with these colors, I can make different color changes as well. And in just a couple clicks, all of a sudden, I have a hierarchical presentation of the data set in a way that best presents the different breakdowns. The table showcasing the details, and the chart showcasing the different areas. I can add additional elements to this chart. You can see the data labels are presented by the different names of the sponsorship team leads. But I can also go into more data options and decide to adjust the elements directly from here. Label options. And when I go to the actual data labels themselves, going down to the numbers, you can see that if we had numbers available, different types of formats and whatnot that we could use. I'm going to move over to Sunburst. A Sunburst chart is for hierarchical data as well, but it's presented in a slightly different way than we saw in our tree map. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and select my area. And you're going to see that we've got that quick analysis again. Once again, I'm going to jump over to my charts. And you can see that we've got different charts that it's recommending. We're going to say more again. But this time, I'm going to jump over to my Sunburst. I go ahead and say OK. And once again, we're seeing that hierarchy broken down. But this in a very different way than we saw in our tree map. Our tree map was focused more on the branches, whereas our, our Sunburst is more focused on the actual hierarchical levels themselves. So first, an economy ticket flights broken down within the inner rings, and then within the outer rings, we can see them broken down even further. Again, presenting the data in that hierarchical standpoint is critical for making sure that your Sunburst turns out effectively. I start with my bigger hierarchies on the left and then start subdividing to the right. Excel scans things line by line. If my data was presented in a different fashion, and I had airlines here on the left, this Sunburst wouldn't have looked as good. And we would have seen it attempting to break down our different airlines by its classes. Presenting the data like this is giving the impression that, okay, we're spending more on economy flights than we are in other ticket styles, but we're also seeing by the increased volume of segments that we're using a wider variety of airlines. Let's check out the waterfall charts now. Waterfall charts are good for showing a running total as values are added or subtracted. And they tend to be really popular in anyone in financial services or banking environments, because they get to showcase essentially how things lead cumulatively to a net total. So let's look at that whole idea of sponsorship and spend. So dollars coming in and dollars coming out. We're seeing a lot of pluses and minuses that start at a beginning and end with an accumulated net total. So it shows us these values of positive and negative values, and we can see that we can have elements color coded as well. I'll select the data set, and once again go into my quick analysis. As I jump inside here, you can see that I can jump from my formatting to my charts. I'll select more, and there's my my waterfall recommended just second, showing us the cumulative effects. I say OK, and we can see the waterfall chart as it's spread apart. So blue showcasing the increases and red showcasing the decreases. And we have this other element right here called total. Now you'll notice that the total is not actually in the chart, but I did include it in terms of the net revenue. So what we need to do is we need to define that element as the total. Just calling it net revenue or total isn't enough. We have to click on the tab once to select all the different columns, click on it a second time, and you select the final one. I can now go in and, we've gone ahead and selected that one. I'll go into that one. There we are, right click, and you can see that it gives me the option to set it as a total. I'll go ahead and do that, and there you go. Now it's taken on the green role, and our waterfall, sometimes called a bridge chart, showcases the pluses and minuses. What's nice about this is it's also showcasing a seasonality. We're seeing where the expenditures were really happening, or more importantly, where the spending exceeded the amount of dollars coming in. And we can, when you're seeing that as compared across that waterfall, you're getting a sense of exactly when and how this data is being presented. I'll give it a quick little title. And I'll see it pretty much ready to go. Now, if you look a little bit closer at it, you're going to see that there's small lines in the background. Those lines are showcasing when something increases as well as when something decreases. I'm just going to go back to the format for a second. And I apologize, the design. I'll set it to black and you can see the lines a little bit more clearly. So we can see that when it descends, the lines are at the bottom, and when it ascends, the lines are at the top. And we can choose with our increased options whether or not we want to include our grid lines or not, or whether we want to include those lines or not. Our different quick designs allow us to very, very, very easily present these different elements. Now, she sees that she's got an additional link here. It's a different way that we can present this data. Now, we've already been talking about the data in terms of its sponsorship and its totals. We can see how much the flight costs that the VIP sponsors coming in are, and how the different spends are able to happen. We've got this other element here as well that's saying, hey, don't forget, there's a bit of an exchange rate that could be happening. So all I see here is a link to the Bank of Canada exchange rates site. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that link and I'm going to copy it. And I might want to take a look, okay, are these dollars going to be impacted, when, especially on this one right here, when we have different people coming in from different places? Are things going to be affected when it comes to our sponsorship? So we're going to jump over to the Data tab. And from the Data tab, I'm going to choose to query the data. Now, in 2016, we can go directly to querying our data from different places. We can choose from files, from databases, as well as from other sources. I'm going to choose to query this stuff from the web directly. Now, it is a set-by security problem, but we're going to be okay with that. So we'll say okay. It's asking me where I should put in my URL. In other words, where should I put in that link? So I pop it in, and I say okay. What we're now doing is querying the Bank of Canada website. And it shows us different tables that might be available there. And you'll see directly here that here's our table based on exchange rate of all of our different countries relatively. Now, I might not want to use all of this data set. So if I wanted just to look at the US dollar on its own and not bother with the different forward point spreads, I can actually sort of edit the data a little bit by clicking this little edit button. I choose to edit, and it opens up my query editor. And we're seeing a whole bunch of different button stuff that can sometimes be a little bit intimidating. But really, They're just a set of filters and a different way that we can kind of look at the data set if we really want to be able to work with stuff. If you actually notice, the different types of transformations, columns that we're working with here are just editing tools. This can, of course, be done after the fact as well inside Excel. I'm just going to go into my currencies very quickly. And I'm going to go down to the different US, and I'm going to remove those two US elements I didn't want. Say OK. Once I've got that done, I'm going to choose to go ahead to close and load these elements. Now that I've loaded these elements up, I've managed to query it, and my table has come in exactly the way that I wanted to see it. And you'll notice that my sponsorship report is a lot more visual. I can apply visualizations not only from our charting standpoint, but in different ways that we can better present this data set. At the end of the day, the objective that we've got here is that Molly wants to be able to present this stuff in a way so that Karen can make use of it for her marathon. So she really wants to make sure that she can visually understand what's happening as quick as possible. She's going to go ahead and select the data that she's working on, click inside, and select the data. And once again, we can jump to our quick analysis. When we go into our quick analysis, she can go over to sparklines. Now, sparklines are really interesting because sparklines essentially are like a charting alternative. What they really do is they focus on trending, but extracting the scale at the same time. So you can see these numbers are very different from one another. Some are very high, some are not quite as high. But again, what we're looking at here is the change. So if we're trying to predict sort of what these exchanges are going to look like in the future, it's really more about the rate of change that we're interested in, and not so much whether something is exceptionally large or small. If we take a look at the linear sparklines, it's a really easy way to showcase the trend and see if things are generally volatile or whether they're on a general decline or whether they're on a slightly more stable decline. And so relative to their own changes, we can see those trends actually in place. Now, once these different elements are put together, what would normally happen here is we'd simply pop this back up into OneDrive. Now, you would have noticed that my name is listed right there in the name box. The reason for that is, again, as mentioned, I am running 3 different profiles simultaneously here. So unfortunately, I can't get that right back up to the top. But those different elements and different sharing types can still be used in a very simple way by simply putting them back into your OneDrive. So I'm going to jump into Karen's OneDrive right now. Okay, when I get into Karen's OneDrive and I take a look at the different files she's working on, she can take some of those documents and she can put in and she can upload them directly into her file account and share them off, as we saw before. But let's take a look at what's also been shared with her. Now, as she goes through this, she can see that different sponsorship metrics have already been shared on this account. I did that to showcase in advance the fact that we can just easily get this back up by simply dragging and dropping them into the share area, or simply going in and sharing the files directly to her. Now, these different sharing elements can be added or removed as you see fit. You can see that over here in the sharing area. Now, you can see that the Bank Marathon press release has been shared with Molly and other people. But there's also a remittance form that's been shared with a variety of other people as well. So one of the concerns people sometimes have in terms of all of this sharing and all of this productivity is, how do I control sort of what's only for me and what's for other people as well? When we focus on the area that's only for us, we can see a little lock right next to it, and it showcases that it's only for us. If we see it for other people as well, we can see right down here that it's shared with other more people. If I jump to my recents, I can see exactly what different recent files I've been working with. And we can see not only what have we been working on, but sort of other elements that we've been sharing and that have been shared with us as well. We can go down to see what's been shared within our SharePoint sites within Discover, as well as what we've tossed out in our recycle bin. So it really just kind of gives us a much more cohesive idea of exactly what's been shared and what's been provided at the same time. Now, one of the things we might want to work on or might want to look at is understanding a little bit more about some of these topics that we've been looking at. I'm going to jump back to this area on the marathon for a moment and jump back to my tree map. If I ever have trouble or if I'm looking for some of these alternatives, charting types of visualizations, there's different ways that I can get information on them. And I can do that with Tell Me or with different lookup options as well. Tell Me is a great tool when you're transitioning, especially to the new the new Office systems, whether it's 365 or whether it's just simply 2016 standalone. Because sometimes it can be tough to figure out exactly where is everything, especially when I'm just going to open my ribbon up here a second time, especially when you think about how many different commands, how many different buttons and actions that we have available to us. Now, this is only a very limited sense of all the buttons and actions that Excel has to offer you. If I go into my quick access toolbar, you can see that we can customize it. I can say, show me some more commands. Now, sure, we've got a list of different popular commands here, but maybe what I'm looking for isn't quite so popular. I'm going to jump into popular commands and change it to all. Now, did you see how much that search bar shrunk? There is a huge element of commands that we have available to us. There's quite a lot to get through. And maybe I don't know exactly where the one little feature I'm looking for happens to be. Let's cancel. Tell Me is going to allow you to jump directly to that feature so that you don't actually have to know specifically where it is. So if I did want to make more about this, but I didn't quite know how to access my tree maps, I didn't quite understand how I wanted to work with these different charts, I can jump straight to Tell Me. So I'm going to go ahead and put in tree map. When I put in tree map, it instantly gives me the option to create the chart or create that tree map or Sunburst chart. So it's not just telling you where something is, it's taking you directly there. What this means is, in essence, this is just a direct connection. It's almost like a little personal assistant saying, all right, I don't want to have to look for where this different piece is. Just tell me exactly where it is. Take me directly there. So by going to inserting a hierarchy, I can just literally jump straight to it directly from this element. So we've got it in place already. But it's going to help me with different areas, elements I want to do. If I want to go ahead and start formatting this area, I'll go ahead, and if I choose, okay, let's format that stuff, Tell Me will simply do that. If I wanted to go ahead and make these bold, I'll jump into to Tell Me. I'll say bold, and there it is. And now they go in as bold. So it's simply giving you access to all of those different commands that aren't necessarily very obvious on the ribbon, and sometimes can be in slightly different places. So we've been putting these together for our elements on different marathons. And what we want to do is we might want to know more about it. If I pop in marathon, you'll notice that you also have the ability to find further information through what's called Smart Lookup. So if I jump into Smart Lookup, it's going to take me directly to a Bing-powered search directly online. What we're seeing here is that I can get the different elements on marathons for things that I might want to know further about. But it's not even just about general research and general content. I can use this for understanding more about the analytical side as well. Maybe I did want to know more about waterfall charts. Maybe I wanted to understand them from a technical perspective a little bit better. I'll jump into Tell Me, and I'll say Waterfall chart. We'll do a quick Smart Lookup, and as you can see, we have different searches and different elements that are getting us directly from Wikipedia about exactly what waterfall charts are. The definition, there's no definition specifically allocated to this lookup, but if I jump into that specific waterfall chart, that specific article, it's taking me right to the waterfall chart page in Wikipedia. So without having to necessarily go in and do additional Bing searches or other internet searches that you might want to have to go through to research, you can get the idea and immediately jump straight to Tell Me, which will lead us right to our Smart Lookup, and be able to find anything that we wanted to know specifically about that topic. Now, the Smart Lookup is almost like an internet, a little ready, handy internet browser at your fingertips. So it allows us to find additional things right there. But don't worry, if you're still looking for your traditional help commands, we can find that as well. Waterfall chart. So I can still go and get my straight help on waterfall chart, and this is accessing the Microsoft help. All right, so it's almost like you've got different sort of core resources that you can go to get your different search results. If I wanted to know more about how to do it specifically in 2016, I can go ahead and click on it, and it gives me additional information specifically there. So I've got a lot more resources at my disposal at the click of a button than I typically would have in traditional versions of Office. And what I hope you've noticed here in the last little bit is how we've gone from one concept to another and moved through our applications. That's the whole idea behind Office 365, is that you're moving from one concept and one core software over to another. By presenting this stuff all online, you're able to use a variety of different tools and features in not only a collaborative way, but in a more synergistic way. In other words, we see different elements featured in all of our different applications. So even though you might not think from the onset that research is something you would do with an Excel spreadsheet, when we actually go in and actually use it, you'll see that it actually makes sense, because when we're working on different projects, it's rare that we're just working in one medium. Just like we saw today, we were in email, we were in Delft to search, we were in Excel, we were in Word for a little while. All right, we were in OneDrive and Office 365 to be able to work with those different elements. And that's the whole idea of productivity, is that you're able to get from one of those points to the next as quickly and as easily as possible. All right. So at this point, I just want to say thank you very much for having a quick look at some of the brand new features that we're seeing in Office 2016 and the different elements that we have available. I'm not sure if I don't see any questions right now in the chat, but
hey Alex, yeah, I can. Yep, it's Carl here. If I could, if I could chime in with one.
Sure.
I know it wasn't part of the agenda. We do have a question coming in about Yammer and SharePoint Online. So, for example, with Yammer, has there been any changes or updates with the release of Office 2016, Office 365?
So when it comes to Yammer, I mean Yammer is sort of like social media for your company. I mean when it comes to the different sort of sorry, you're referring to specifically like what updates have happened in.
Yeah, has there been anything new with Yammer at all?
Since it was first launched?
Or since the release of Office 2016, so just in the last, say, several months.
Oh, okay. Well, it's kind of interesting because like the way that that Office 2016 kind of works is that new features are rolled out sort of like on a month-by-month basis. So the version that you're working with from the onset may not be specifically what's coming up in the future. I'm just going to jump into this Yammer site right now. When Yammer was first launched, the thing about it is that it was kind of touted as sort of like a corporate Facebook. But in terms of sort of like specific revolutionary updates, not that I can think of, like not that I know of in terms of things that are just like drastically different, with the exception of perhaps how it relates to your analytics. You can see just sort of, but again, that's more about a personal analytic, like with some of the other applications, just to showcase like sort of where your time is being spent and sort of how you're working with things. And that's more of a, I guess, a Delft feature than anything else. When I jump into Yammer right now, we see one that's held in a very sort of robust way. The only other thing that I can think of is allowing just sort of like external groups to be able to enter into the Yammer environment. But again, that's all related to sort of like your IT credentials and whatnot. Like what I mean by that is, you know, is your company going to allow sort of like externals to be able to enter the Yammer environment?
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you for that. And what about on the SharePoint side? So other than the features that are across the Office suite, such as the Lookup and the collaboration, are there any new features unique to SharePoint 2016 that have come out that you're aware of?
Well, with the SharePoint environment, I mean, again, like these things are coming out sort of regularly, and really what it's based on is just like further and more heightened collaboration. It's a little difficult for me to showcase this stuff using the environment that I'm in right now. This specific environment is one that is cut off from updates, so it's only kind of showcasing it at a point in time. But I'll jump to my sites right now. Probably the most just the increased collaboration and elements, I would say, probably with SharePoint is the ability just to be able to simply upload things further and share them easily across your SharePoint sites. So as long as you've got sort of like the right privileges to access your sites, it's just sort of easier just to sort of find your documents and your different content in those sites themselves.
Okay, good. Excellent, thank you. So yeah, so if there are any other questions, now's your opportunity to do so. I don't see anything else in the chat box here. Oh, just a second, something popped in. Let me just, oh, Cindy said she had a Yammer question. Okay, so, yeah, one more on the okay. Yammer. Yeah, so Cindy, if you can type that in the next second or so, that would be, we could try and respond to that.
Yeah, I can try to provide sort of like Yammer is not, I'll be upfront, Yammer is something that I haven't done a ton of work with. So when it comes to sort of more details about Yammer, I'd be happy to take the questions offline and try to provide the information back to them.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good, Cindy. So if you want, yeah, we can reach out to you. I'll send you a quick email and you can reply with your question for that. So that's excellent. Good. That sounds great. And
Okay.
so again, we'd like to thank everybody for joining us here. I'll just share one last item with you. Let you know that we do have a good selection of Office 2016 courses coming up, and hopefully you can see my screen there with the URL of Office 2016, so traincanada.com/Office 2016. Nice feature on that page as well is we have several Microsoft official Office 2016 quick start guides. So there's one for Excel, Word, PowerPoint, OneNote as well, I believe. So you can go in and download one of those quick two-page guides, and that'll point you to some of the tips and tricks to get you started on Office 2016. And more webinars coming up in the near future. If you want to sign up to our newsletter, that will keep you up to date on all of our upcoming webinars. I know Power BI is one that we have in the mix as well. So again, that concludes today's webinar. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, and we look forward to having you either on an upcoming course with us or on our next webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.